Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 5th episode of Manor University. I'm your assistant professor, Roger Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other. What professor level do you want this week, Michael?
I'll just take assistant professor. That seems like
assistant professor.
Level.
You want to be my peer?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't need to be tenured yet. You're still working on that.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Well, Michael, what game are we watching today?
So today we're watching a match from the Goliath Gauntlet. We're watching DMArmada on Dromai versus Tariq Patel on FAB.
So this is notably a pretty bad matchup for Dromai, right? So what are we really looking for in this matchup?
Yeah, so traditionally this is a pretty FAB favored matchup. The biggest reason it's FAB favored is Mask of Momentum against dragons just means you can destroy them and get a lot of value. Dromai does have some tools to fight back, especially this version that DMArmada is on, with a reasonably lower dragon count than normal and a much higher red count. So in this matchup, he's looking to just race with a lot of high-powered attacks and a few on-hits, like his own copies of Snatch and... Wait, no, there's no Snatch in this deck. His copies of Kylori, I guess, and Dust Up are the main on-hits.
So we talked about Mask of Momentum, but the other equipment suite on FAB's side at the moment look pretty standard with Vindal Spring Tunic for chest, Tiger Stripe Shuko for arms, and Snapdragon Scalers for boots.
Mm-hmm.
And then DMArmada is presenting Silken Form for arms, Crown of Providence for a head, Flamescale Furnace for a chest, and Phantasmal Footsteps for shoes. Do you think Phantasmal Footsteps will really come up a lot in this matchup?
Honestly, it probably won't come up a single time in the matchup, but DMArmada is relying on 6 copies of 1-cost going and Phantasmal attacks with Spears of Sterility and Dunebreaker sent up high, and having that insurance that if one of those gets popped, you won't lose your whole turn is kind of important, even though it's unlikely to come up.
Do you think activating it for blocking will really be a thing in this matchup, or no, that's just not really worth the pitching of a resource?
Yeah, it's not really worth pitching a resource. I could see it happening to potentially stop a mask trigger on a Phoenix Flame, where you can pitch a red, block with your shoes, get an Ash, and stop that mask trigger. But overall, I wouldn't expect it to come up very often because it's pretty inefficient to pitch a card to block 1 point of damage.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to hear, so... So here we see Tariq on the play, just ticking up his tunic and arsenaling. So what do you think about that turn 0 from FAB not being able to push any damage?
Yeah, you usually don't want to go first unless you're getting some form of value or some damage in an arsenal. I guess damage is some form of value because going second, you just get all the tempo. I guess tempo is not the right way to put it. If you go second, you get to play your 4-card hand into their basically 5-card hand. So you get a 4-card hand, then they get a 5-card hand, then you get a 4-card hand. So the fact that you're going first, just minus 1 card, is definitely makes it pretty valuable to go second if they're not going to leak any damage. So DMArmada should be thrilled with this start, and Tariq should be probably pretty unhappy, or at least slightly unhappy about going first and not leaking any damage.
What about knowing that your opponent wants to go first? Because Dromai is usually a deck that really wants to go first in order to start that Ash generation and start setting up the board for future dragons. So even if you're not getting value, what's the merit in denying your opponent their turn 0 value if they're like a setup based deck like Dromai?
Yeah, it's not worth nothing. I think that Dromai doesn't really get enough value off going first to be worth going second, even if she like makes 2 or 3 Ash, or she puts a small dragon into play. I'm usually pretty happy to go second into her.
So here we see DMArmada's turn 1 being a red dust up, or pitching a red dust up to play a red sweeping blow, so getting 2 Ash. So already being really efficient on that Ash economy. Yeah,
and this Ash sets him up to late. Like he'll be set up later to make the multiple dragons in a turn, which against FAB, that's kind of how you want to sequence it. You don't want to make 1 dragon a turn because they're going to be able to kill it and get value off their Mask of Momentum. You want to not have any dragons for a while and then have a turn where you make multiple dragons. So they don't get, they either get one mass trigger that turn and leave you with dragons in play, or basically kill all your dragons and still only get one mass trigger.
Yeah. So Tariq committed the block on the sweeping blow, and DMArmada was able to come in with a really impactful and timely turn 1 command and conquer that Tariq was no longer effectively able to block given his hand, or it really wasn't worth it blocking. And he's going to lose that turn 0 arsenal. So he effectively got nothing but a tick up of a tunic on his turn 0. So that's really not where you want to be at the very start of the game.
Yeah. So if we flip it basically and pretend that Armada went first, Tariq would have gotten, and Tariq's just like up a tunic counter. He's giving up 6 life and a full card basically if he was going second, which is not a good deal for going second, because
not at all.
So his 3-card hand being down 6 life, he's already at a pretty big disadvantage here, and that's not even to account for the 3 ash that DMArmada has.
Yeah, we saw there was a lava burst in the arsenal, so it was even one of its critical payoff cards as well, which I guess you would kind of expect to be in an arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Jumping back, we kind of saw that block on the sweeping blow with a 3 block. Tariq already may be kind of regretting that, since Command and Conquer, maybe he could have blocked it out with that extra 3 block.
And it was just damage, so there was no reason to jump the gun and block like that, especially considering, like, I guess Kyloria really couldn't have come down, but there still could have been a dust up or something like that maybe he would have wanted to block out anyway. So I guess there was just no reason to commit the block that early.
And here he has 2 cards, or he had 3 cards when he pitched this Minnowism to swing with sword. His hand's looking very clunky here. I'm curious why he didn't just block the Command and Conquer.
Maybe he just didn't want to give up 3 cards to block the Command and Conquer, or I guess there could be a 2 blocks and an Art of War.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. If he didn't have the 3 block still. I'm like, he had the 3 block for the Command and Conquer, but he didn't. So.
And then DMArmada coming in with a Rake the Embers pitching a Sigil, so going to make the full 3 Aether Ash Wings off of the efficient Ash economy he had on his turn 1. But Ash Wings really aren't super impactful in this matchup. But I guess, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, this is kind of like similar to what I was talking about, how you want to make multiple dragons at once and not just one dragon. Fi gets 1 Phoenix Flame on most turns. Occasionally he can get 2 with a Flame Call Awakening. But if Tariq wants to kill more than 1 Ashwing, it looks like they're looking for another Ashwing here. But if Tariq wants to kill more than 1 Ashwing, the second Ashwing he's probably sending something bigger than a Phoenix Flame at, which Armada's pretty happy if he swings like a Searing Ember Blade or a 0 for 3 at another Ashwing.
Followed up with a Dromai here, so this is definitely the go-wide strategy that Dromai wants to be implementing to start overwhelming Fi.
Yeah, this is great from Dromai's side, where you're putting all your dragons, or a bunch of dragons, in play at once. And yeah, Tariq's going to get a mass trigger when he cleans these up, but he's going to have to spend a lot of resources cleaning them up, or he's going to leave you with some dragons in play.
Yeah, and importantly, Fi being a very aggressive deck that's trying to kill their opponent as fast as possible, all of those dragons buying you health as well is very impactful in the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Dromai got popped by Command and Conquer, and then the 3 whelps were free to come in with the second action point that Dromai generated.
Dromai showing itself to be one of the most powerful dragons, just because that action point allows you to play around a single popper, on top of just being a 0 cost for 3 power dragon.
Yeah, very efficient. So now it's really on Tariq to have, I guess, his first meaningful turn of the game, since he wasn't able to capitalize on his turn 0 or his turn 1. So hopefully he's able to string together something that can start putting Dromai on the back foot.
Yeah, he's had a couple rough turns, but this time we'll see if that changes, I guess.
So leading with the Rising Resentment with 3 cards left in hand. Pretty standard start. I guess critically, though, this wasn't a 0 block that we thought he might have had. So if his hand was nothing but 2 blocks, he could have chosen to block out the Command and Conquer to keep that Lava Burst, but maybe just valued still trying to threaten some damage, all being inefficient, than just playing a more defensive game.
Yeah, I'm still a little confused about what happened on that first turn where he didn't block and the turn with 2 cards in hand. But yeah, this turn looks like it's shaping up to be pretty good here, especially like I was saying, how you don't want to send multiple Phoenix or multiple attacks at Ashwings because it's not super efficient. But these Phoenix Flames, he's getting an extra Phoenix Flame to kill an Ashwing.
Yeah. And here we see Sand Cover eating up the damage from the Flameclaw Awakening, using up DMArmada's last Ash, importantly though. But it's also interrupting the second chain, so preventing that Phoenix Flame from getting card draw when it hit Aether Ashwing.
And here, is that a Blue Snatch to clean up the last Ashwing? Blue Snatch triggers the mask and draws a card from the Snatch. He can use his Snapdragon Scalers to give it go again. And this is shaping up to be a very nice turn from Tariq. He got all 3 Ashwings off the board. He has 2 cards, and he's already sent 6 damage at DMArmada. And he also, this hand was the hand that had the Command and Conquer to pop the dragon earlier. This was a pretty good 5 cards for Tariq here.
Yeah, importantly though, so he did have to use the Snapdragon Scalers in order to give that Snatch go again to continue the turn. And that will leave him vulnerable on future turn cycles, not being able to smooth out those hands if he doesn't have a good chain starter or good go again attacks for the middle of the chain to get up to that critical 4 chain links for his rupture effects. So we'll see if this commitment of Snapdragon Scalers comes back to ultimately hurt him later, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this isn't like a critical turn. It's not like this is an Art of War or something like that. It's just, he's just trying to have his first efficient, good turn of the game.
Yeah, and if we look back, there is a way he could have sequenced the turn to not use Snapdragon Scalers or even use his Tunic counter. He would just would have had to pitch this Blue Snatch.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like it is good value drawing 2 cards off of the Snatch, but I guess like given that you're so far into the turn already and you're just going up to 3 cards in your hand already again, is there that much of a meaningful difference between drawing 1 and 2 cards here?
Yeah, the full card probably represents like 3 damage or so off this Ronin Renegade. So it's definitely not nothing, like getting to play the Snatch. But if instead he had gone like Rising Resentment and then pitch the Snatch, play Flameclaw Awakening, get a Phoenix Flame, send Searing Everblade at a dragon and then the 2 flames at the 2, or send Searing Everblade at an Ashwing and then the 2 Phoenix Flames at an Ashwing, he'd still get 1 card and keep both his Snapdragon Scalers and a Tunic counter. So that perhaps might have been a safer line. We'll see if using this early use of Snapdragon Scalers comes back to bite him. It basically traded Snapdragon Scalers and the Tunic counter for 1 card.
Yeah, which is not amazing, but it's not horrible either. So critically, here's one of those really efficient go again attacks from Dromai. He's not going to be able to capitalize on it, just given that this is a 3-card hand. He had to pitch 1 card and play the spears, so the go again might not be as impactful, but still pushing 5 damage is really relevant when you're racing like this.
Yeah, and it's not definitely irrelevant. So the go again is great here.
Yeah, that's a great 3-card hand coming in. That's 11 cards or 11 damage off of 3 cards and threatening the disruptive hit of Command and Conquer. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's kind of the power of these 1-for-5 go against. 1-for-5 go against not a card that we see without Phantasm or really anywhere else in the game. I think the closest thing is Life for a Life outside of these Phantasm attacks. They're just really powerful. We've seen 0-for-4 go against that are like conditional and they're like mainstays of a lot of decks that can play them, like Lightning Surge, the Lightning one, Scar for a Scar. These cards are great.
Yeah, and then we see once again the Command and Conquer getting the arsenal from Tariq. He didn't want to commit more than 1 card blocking it or his equipment yet, which is, I guess it's definitely staking a claim for how impactful he thinks his equipment is going to be in the long run in this game.
Yeah. So here we also see the lack of Snapdragon Scalers coming up already. Choosing 5 go again with the Inlight Strike and then attacking for 4 with the Snatch. This is probably a concession to the fact that he doesn't have Snapdragon Scalers anymore. Because what you'd most of the time, I think you'd rather just play E-Strike for +2 and just arsenal the snatch to use later. But the fear of just drawing too many finishers when you have no Snapdragon scalers is something that is probably weighing in his mind when he decides to take 2 less damage on Enlightened Strike to get that go again.
Yeah. And here we see Dromai committing Crown of Providence and Flamescale Furnace to block out the snatch. Makes sense denying Tariq the arsenal off the card draw from the snatch, but using Crown of Providence, I guess like it's more impactful to stop the snatch than it is to maximize the filtering of Crown of Providence off of a 5-card hand. So I guess that's just like a small thing that I was just thinking about, that's all.
Yeah, especially if you're getting some value out of your Crown of Providence, maybe DMArmada's hand's a little bit awkward and he really wants this filtering, then you're pretty happy with a good chance to use your Crown of Providence.
Yeah, that's fair.
Looks like he's thinking pretty hard about what to sync with the Crown, though. One thing that I do want to bring up that hasn't come up yet, but it could come up here. Maybe DMArmada's turn is kind of awkward because he has no Ash. We saw a couple turns ago, he had a Sand Cover in Arsenal, and he played that and used his last Ash to stop 3 points of damage. And not having Ash here can lead to some awkward hands from Dromai's side.
Absolutely. And DMArmada's list specifically isn't looking to pitch as reds as often as probably other Dromai lists, given that he's trying to play these 1-for-5s into the 2-cost attack. So that's really looking to pitch blues a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how his Ash generation shakes out.
His blue count is super low. I think he has 6 blue cards in his deck for this matchup. The Dunebreaker Setup, 3 blue Dunebreaker Setup applies, and 3 blue Sweeping Blows. And then there's 3 blue Passing Mirage, but I would not be surprised if those are not in this matchup. This turn looks very efficient, though. Ravenous Rabble for 4 go again into Blaze Headlong for 4 go again. This is just like kind of what this Dromai deck can do. It can really race with these super efficient attacks.
Yeah, it's interesting that Blaze Headlong isn't a card that's seen very often in a deck like Dromai, but I guess if you're trying to lean into especially those 1-for-5 go again red Phantasmal cards, leading it up with a Blaze Headlong really seems like a good way to push that extra damage.
Yeah, Blaze Headlong, except in the most controlling Dromai decks, I think it should be in most Dromai decks. Just 0-for-4 with go again is a very good rate, and the conditional go again is you have to play a red first, which Dromai is very good at doing. All the dragons are reds with go again, on top of having some other red go again attacks.
Yeah, Dromai always wants to be playing a red go again attack or red go again card every turn anyways, so it's not a big ask for the deck at all. And then critically though, he's following up that with a red Dust Up, so presenting 12 damage, and this last card's threatening an Aether Ashwing as well. I guess. Oh, Dust Up does create the Ash for the Aether Ashwing as well, though, so don't have to worry about that coming up.
Yeah, so Dust Up, you can create an Ash and then transform it. I would be very surprised to see DMArmada transform the Ash into an Ashwing, since it's just kind of giving Fi an opportunity to kill it. So if this Dust Up hits, I expect just take the Ash, no transform.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how impactful, I guess, is Dust Up overall? Because I guess I'm just trying to think of it, comparing it to a card like Snatch. Like, we saw Dromai on the previous turn commit 2 pieces of equipment to stop that Snatch from hitting. How impactful, I guess, compared to Snatch, how impactful is this Dust Up from hitting? We saw Tariq choosing to block 2 cards, so obviously he did not want that on hit trigger to go through.
Yeah, I was actually... I want to see what Tariq's last card is before we kind of evaluate. But blocking out this Dust Up, getting 1 Ash is good, but it's worth reasonably less than a card. So...
yeah, it might have just been an awkward all-red hand, because we saw him block with the Spreading Flames, another red card, and then he just came in with a Ronin Renegade on his turn.
Mm-hmm. That's probably what it was. But... Tariq, it feels like he's falling further and further behind in these turn cycles. DMArmada is playing 0-for-4s and Tariq's blocking with 2 blocks. not where you want to be.
Yeah, you would expect this is like the life totals are almost reverse for where you would expect them to be at this point in the game, because normally Fi is supposed to be the deck pushing all these huge damage turns, and Dromai is supposed to be on the back foot trying to mitigate as much damage as possible and then just chip back with attacks here or there. But it's really been since that turn 1 Command and Conquer, Dromai's really been able to just ride that momentum through the rest of the game, while Tariq struggled to put together some cohesive turns on a couple of turns.
Yeah, and that can really be chalked up to all these efficient attacks, plus both Command and Conquer turns were got an arsenal. So it's basically a 2-card play where he pitches a red to activate Furnace, and then he plays a Command and Conquer. Your 2 cards for 6 damage and killing a card of your opponent. That's a very good rate, and that's a big part of why this game has gone so heavily in DMArmada's favor so far.
Yeah, I guess here's the critical question that we like to do halfway through every episode. So how would you, I think we're both on the same page that Dromai's ahead, but how far is Dromai ahead in this game state at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, so Dromai just has a 5-card hand here. DMArmada chose not to block the Ronin Renegade, or Rising Resentment, the 0 for 3 from Fi last turn. So
one of the ninja cards that has go again, and yeah.
Given that so many cards in Dromai block for 3, I would expect DMArmada to be able to use his entire hand at least reasonably efficient here. Like every card's probably worth at least 3 points here. And when you're at 10 life and there's 4 cards left on DMArmada's side, that does not seem good for usage. You're going to have to block pretty soon, if not this turn, definitely next turn. So Tariq has probably one turn left to have a really big Fi turn of like maybe 1 or 2 Art of Wars or Art of War Spreading Flames or something big, or otherwise the game's just going to be locked up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess the next question was going to be, how does Tariq come back into this game? And critically, we haven't seen him pitch or play or be able to arsenal a single Art of War yet. They could be in his arsenal now, but though that's really the card that's going to allow Fi to push those 15, 20, sometimes 20 plus damage turns. And without seeing Art of War or really any like his huge payoff cards yet, I think that's also contributed to him falling behind like this as well.
Yeah. And critically, his Tunic is going to 3 this turn. If he goes something like activate Tunic, play a red Belittle, get a blue Minnowism, and cast an Art of War, that's like a recipe for a really big turn from Fi. So if he can keep a 4 or 5 card hand that starts with that, I think that's how he gets back into this game.
Yes, we'll have to see what happens. But of course, here we see DMArmada keeping up the pressure, coming in with another 4 go again, with the Ravenous Rebel, really laying on to Tariq's dwindling life total.
And just kind of jumping around a little bit. We see this Mask Momentum from Tariq's side. So far, it's triggered 1 time. So
yeah,
it's not looking great compared to what Mask of the Pouncing Lynx could do of just doing 5+ damage. So this is kind of more props to DMArmada than anything. Just like only having 1 turn where he had dragons at play, and he had a bunch of dragons at play. So getting 1 mass trigger, but getting a lot of value out of his Ash still.
Yeah, I guess if I want to get on my Fi soapbox for a moment, I just don't think there's a reason to put Mask Momentum in the deck list anymore. Just Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is almost a broken piece of equipment, and Mask Momentum is like fine. So it just seems like a pretty big disparity between those 2 headpieces. So this is interesting. So we see the Dunebreaker Centipede coming in last with DMArmada pitching an Ember Moth Centipede in order to come in for this 1 for 5. Do you think it's just he missed activating Flamescale Furnace to make pitching the Dunebreaker Centipede to make the 2 resources for Ember Moth Centipede, or is there just a reason why he specifically wants to come in with the 1 for 5?
Yeah, I would guess that he just missed it because the 1 for 5 is worse than the 2 for 8. And
he's not going to be able to use this action point or anything like that.
Yeah, even if the best way he could use his action point is, I guess he could still conform his Ash into an Ashwing attack with it also, but that's still just 6 damage. So the Ember Maw would be 8, which is reasonably better still.
Yeah, and it doesn't commit that Ash either, so.
And critically, if he wanted to attack with the second Ashwing, he could pitch the Dunebreaker, activate Flamescale Furnace, and then Silken Form into an Ashwing, attack with it, and then play the Embermoth Centipede. And that's probably the best line.
Yeah, and importantly, though, Tarik's at 6 life right now, and the Embermoth Centipede is coming in for 5. Tariq can choose to just ignore this if he wants to. He's not obligated to either commit a piece of equipment or a card out of his hand with this. That wouldn't be the case if DMArmada was attacking with the Embermoth Centipede. That 8 damage would force either a piece of, at least like a piece of equipment plus a card from hand, both of his pieces of equipment, or a 3 block from his hand. So the difference between this 5 and 8 damage is really critical at the moment.
Yeah, and especially Tariq can block with the Tiger Stripe Shuko, and even if the Silken Form goes through, makes an Ashwing, attacks for 1, he'll go to 2, which means he can keep the Mask Momentum in play. And DMArmada just put an Ashwing into play. Getting a block out of that Mask Momentum probably represents a full card.
I have to say, though, we've reviewed Dromai a couple times, though, and I've seen a fair amount of Dromai lists. I forgot how much I liked DMArmada's list and this ability to be like this aggressive Dromai. I think it's a really interesting take on the deck, and I'm inspired now to pick up Dromai, I think, or at least try it out a little bit more.
Yeah, these attack-heavy versions, I think, are probably going to end up being at least one of the better ways to play Dromai. I think, like, having all these efficient attacks, like, I'm a big fan of efficient attacks.
I wouldn't believe it. So here we're seeing, like you said, the Belittle coming out from Arsenal, tutoring up the Blue Minnowism, but importantly, he played the brand with Cinderclaw to allow this Belittle to also be a Draconic Chainlink as well first.
Yeah. And without the Artivore, I expect this still won't be enough to seal the deal, basically, or turn the game around. But this is still going to be a pretty strong turn, just probably not the turn that Tariq needs to be back in this game.
Yeah, I could imagine him going up to 3, 6, 9, 12, plus a Phoenix Flame. Let's say the extra 2 cards in his hands are worth 3 at 3 on average a piece. That's exactly lethal since DMArmada started at 21. That's 21 damage, but DMArmada still has a block available on his Flamescale Furnace and 4 cards in his hand at the moment, so it's highly unlikely that Tariq's going to be able to strip a lot of cards or put DMArmada into a very bad situation right now.
Yeah, I guess he could have a finisher like Lava Burst to make one of his cards worth more than 3 damage, and he also is going to get a mass draw probably off this Ashwing at some point during the turn, unless Armada's blocking pretty aggressively.
Yeah, and here we see DMArmada blocking the second Chainlink, and that's important because Tariq could have just picked up the Phoenix Flame, paid a resource for it, sure, but sent that Phoenix Flame at the Ashwing in order to draw a card, and that's why it was so important to break up the second Chainlink to not allow the third Chainlink to hit.
Yeah, and here with a 4 power as a second Chainlink, it's very hard for Armada to block out a 4 power, so he ends up just...
He still has Flamescale Furnace, though, so if he had another 3 block plus Flamescale, he could have blocked out the Blaze Headlong if he wanted to.
That's true. To potentially keep denying the Mass Trigger, because now Tariq has 2 cards in hand off the Mass Draw plus this Rising Ronin Renegade that he had before.
And then able to refuel his resources here by playing a second Belittle that he critically drew off of the mask. So, yeah, this is definitely the... If this was an Artivore turn, I think a turn like this was exactly what Tariq would have needed to win the game. But without the Art of War, it's just going to be a little bit short.
And so far, Art of War would have represented 5 damage on this turn. And I doubt that Tariq will be able to use all 3 resources from this second Blue Minnowism, since Phi doesn't have any 3 costs. I guess the best thing he could do is finish on an Enlightened Strike and tuck the Minnowism to the bottom.
It's interesting that DMArmada is choosing to block this Belittle now, just because had he blocked the Blaze Headlong with this Kyloria and Flamescale Furnace, he could have denied the card draw. Maybe he just really wants to keep the Flamescale Furnace in play to try to generate some ash, but I just don't think that's going to be as impactful in the long run, quote unquote, given that this game won't be going on that much longer, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said earlier, blocking with the Flamescale Furnace and a 3-block on the Blaze Headlong would have made a lot of sense to continue, like, making it difficult for Tariq to get his Mask Momentum trigger. Because if Tariq ends up Phoenix Slamming the Ash Ring without getting a Mask trigger, you're very happy about that.
I guess there's something to be said about trying to keep the Kyloria or just holding on through all this aggression. I guess, like, why did he choose to block this Belittle with the Kyloria? It wasn't required by any stretch of imagination. It was just a regular old amount of damage, and it's not like he was obligated to block because of his life total. So I guess just opting to preserve that 3 life at the end of a combat chain is just an interesting decision to me.
So it does seem kind of weird. Tariq could easily just end on a snatch here, and you'd want your 3-block plus Furnace. Since you're not stopping any on hits, there's not a lot of value in blocking the Belittle specifically. You know that there's at least another 0 for 3 coming, and the Mask is already triggered, so you're not worried about that. I think it makes a lot of sense to just wait on the Kyloria block. Yeah.
And then while I was discussing the block, we finally saw the Art of War come in a little too late. Or I guess, yeah, he ideally would have liked to have started the chain with this Art of War, but he drew it off of the Mask Momentum trigger. So here we see not blocking with that Kyloria cascading even further then, since Tariq drew a very impactful card to allow him to push a couple extra damage. I guess he's not going to be able to utilize it to its maximum effect. I guess taking even one step further back, how do you even feel about casting this Art of War this late in this turn?
Well, so it's getting 1 damage from the Belittle, and then you have this blue Minnowism that's giving you 3 resources that you're not really going to be able to use. So casting it means you can at least try to use some of these Minnowism resources, which I like, and I don't think you're going to get an opportunity at a 4-card hand to get the rest of this game. You're at 3 life, and DMArmada has a lot of 4+ power attacks, so you're probably not getting a chance at a 4-card hand again. You don't have a way to use your blue Minnowism resources, and it's getting at least 2 damage in here, potentially 3, depending on what the last card you draw off it is. You're getting 1 from the Belittle, and then you're drawing 2 more cards with 2 resources loading. It's reasonably likely you'll be able to play both cards. I think it makes a lot of sense here to cash in this Art of War for what is probably going to be 4 damage.
Okay. And I guess also you just used the Tunic counter this turn, so you wouldn't be able to Tunic Art of War for another 3 turns, and expecting this game to go that much longer is pretty optimistic at this point.
Yeah, definitely optimistic.
And it's interesting that Tariq has yellow Belittles in his deck and still opting to not play Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, because one of the best things that I think the yellow Belittle with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is the biggest innovation that I've seen, or that we've seen out of FAB in the recent meta decks, just because allowing one of your early 0 for 3s to connect, triggering Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, getting one of those yellow Belittles, and then allowing your Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to then also tutor you up 3 resources on top of the damage is an incredible resource that I just think is game changing when I realized like that avenue is available to FAB. So I don't know. Just singing more praises to Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, I guess.
It is good when it comes up. Usually it's not worth using your Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to go get a Belittle, but sometimes getting the Belittle can fix your whole hand. And I think this matters the most when you have a Tunic counter, because if you go get your yellow Belittle and then you have to pitch a full red to play your yellow Belittle to get your resources, you probably could have found a better use of your hand, and using up your whole Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to do that's not great. But if you have a Tunic counter and you hit with something, you play your yellow Belittle off the Tunic counter, go get your blue Minnowism, and then play like an Art of War or something with the resources and have a way to use those resources after that's very, very powerful.
Well, yeah, but I guess we think back to the first couple turns from Tariq where he had those all red hands and they weren't really functional. just because he didn't have access to the resources, and that just caused him to fall further and further behind. If he was able to use his Mask of the Pouncing Lynx to turn one of those into just a very threatening functional turn, especially like I'm thinking back to like the Spreading Flames that he had to block with on like an all red hand, being able to turn that hand into something that's very threatening, I think is really, really impactful, given that, and it's not even something that you have to do with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, because like we're all very well aware at this point, it could still just be worth 6 points of damage at the end, tutoring up a Lava Burst, but threatening both just like 6 damage and now also that hand fixing resource ability, I think really pushes this card over the edge into just broken tier.
yeah, it's really strong.
But Tariq was able to push 18 points of damage that turn.
Through 2 blocks, so that was a 24 damage turn that he threaded. So a pretty strong turn. Partly on the back of the Mask Momentum, drawing a card when he killed the Ashwing.
And then just another one of those 0 for 4s and Skittering Sands, coming with an Aether Ashwing, and then the Blaze Headlong. Yeah,
this is a great 2-card hand from Armada over here, just presenting 8 damage off 2 cards. Really putting Fi in a spot he doesn't want to be in.
And critically, DMArmada making the heads up play, he played the Skittering Sands, but did not attack with the dragon first, because in the case that Tariq has a popper, he wouldn't be able to then come in with the Blaze Headlong. So he played the Skittering Sands, that counts as the red for the Blaze Headlong to get the go again, attack with the Blaze Headlong, and then come in with the Aether Ashwing second to play around a popper. So really heads up play there.
Yep, perfect sequencing. Tariq in a bad spot here. Having to block 2 cards means he's at best keeping a 2-card hand, or I guess he can block with some equipment.
Yeah, so he could block for 3 with Mask and Tunic, go to 2, and then block with another 3 block and go to 1. So I guess his best case scenario is keeping a 3-card hand, which isn't terrible. Also assuming that he has a 3 block, which isn't a given in a deck like Fi.
Yeah, definitely not a given. He does have a reasonable amount of 3 blocks. A lot of the blues are 3 blocks. There's E-Strikes, there's Lava Burst.
Yeah, but it's just not guaranteed, I guess. But here we do see him blocking with the Lava Burst, which makes sense. It's very unlikely that he's going to get to those Ruptured Chain Links with limited cards in his hand now.
Though one of Fi's best 3-card hands is a red starter into pitching a blue for Sword plus Fi ability to get back Phoenix Flame and then ending on Lava Burst. So looks like that's probably not what's going to happen if he's blocking with the Lava Burst. Maybe it was his only 3 blocks, so he didn't have a lot of options, or maybe he just doesn't have that hand.
And then, like I said, here comes the block for 3 off the equipment. Tariq's going to go down to 1 and try to strip as many cards as he can from DMArmada's hand on the crackback. But given that DMArmada still has Flamescale Furnace and better cards that block overall in his deck than Tariq has, and his, like, I guess, like, if we're looking card for card block value, DMArmada's deck is just better at blocking overall, so it's more easily able to mitigate damage than Fi at this point, which helps him in this racing situation. Tariq choosing to block with a 2-block and a piece of equipment instead, keeping his Findall Spring Tunic. Maybe he is trying to go another 3 turns. Damage E-Strike. That card's broken.
The cleared ice are kind of tough to see here, but it's coming in for 7, it looks like. Which should get 2 cards, even because 1 card plus the furnace isn't enough. So there's what we were talking about the block with the footsteps. It probably wouldn't come up, but he couldn't actually play the sand cover because he didn't have Ash. And then burn them all. 2 burn them alls for 2 arcane damage will end the game here. Tariq can't block arcane damage.
What do you think about burn them all even being in the deck?
It's kind of weird against Fi because it's hard to keep a lot of dragons in play or have dragons in play turn to turn, and you don't like I was saying earlier, you don't want to space out your dragons. So you play one dragon this turn, the next turn you play one dragon, then the next turn you play one dragon, because that kind of just gives Fi a lot of mass momentum triggers. So I would be inclined to look at Burn Them All as one of the cards I want to cut in this matchup.
Yeah, it's more of a card that I think of for longer, grindier games that you play kind of like after you set up a pitch deck of good dragons, and then you try to get the increased incidental value for attacking with them turn after turn, because it's just not the best card when you're just trying to short-term race, because it's very hard to get the amount of damage off of it to make it worth casting in these shorter, more compacted games. And like you were saying, it's not guaranteed that you'll even have a dragon on the board every turn that Burn Them All is on the battlefield. So worked out here though.
Yeah, though a lot of 2-card hands probably would have sealed the deal for DMArmada here with like maybe 2-0 for 4s into an Ashwing attack probably would be good enough. But the Burn Them Alls made it, so there was no question the game just ends.
Oh, any concluding thoughts on this very interesting game?
Yeah, it was really close, and a lot of decisions mattered quite a bit. Tariq not seeing a single Art of War turn until the Art of War he played in the middle of his turn after the mass trigger on Chainlink 5 was pretty rough for him. And then the 2 Command & Conquers were both like kind of backbreaking. And that's kind of the things you need to go right when you're playing one of your worst matchups, like Dromai versus Fi isn't a great matchup for Dromai. And they all lined up, and DMArmada played very well. He made, I think the one mistake that we caught was the
Kyloria block. Yeah, that's the only thing that's notable. But yeah.
Oh, maybe there was one other. I was going to point to the turn where he played the Dunebreaker Senpai instead of the Ember Moss Senpai.
Oh, yeah.
But
I forgot that one. You forgot the other one. So we both had two memorable mistakes, but that's it. But 2 mistakes in a game of Flesh and Blood, that's pretty good.
Everyone makes mistakes in a game of Flesh and Blood. And his game plan of just racing, playing a lot of efficient attacks, and having these 3 Command & Conquers for disruption. Like I mentioned at the start of the video that he doesn't have a lot of on hits. And I didn't even mention Command & Conquer at the time. I was talking about Dust Up and Kyloria. But the Command & Conquer's all backbreaking. Fi does not like seeing powerful on hits on his opponent's side of the field.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. We hope you enjoy this episode. Let us know what you thought down below in the comments. And next time you're studying Flesh and Blood, always remember to mind your manners. We'll see you next lesson.